let's start our discussion of operant conditioning. We're going to move away from classical conditioning and go into operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is still an associative conditioning or learning style, so you're still associating two things together, but it's a little bit different. So let's look at the difference between the two. So classical conditioning, forms an association between two stimuli. Okay, so remember the dogs, Pavlov's dogs, they're associating a sound with food, right? So those are two stimuli that are being associated together. In operant conditioning, we are forming an association with a behavior and a consequence, okay? Good or bad. So a behavior, something that we voluntarily choose to do, and a consequence. That's where the association comes in. So in classical conditioning, the example responses that we could get would be blinking, flinching, fear that we would have, nausea, wincing, pain, anxiety. In operant conditioning, however, the responses are going to be sit your butt on the floor, doing your homework, getting good grades, meeting curfew, not missing a shot at basketball. What differences do you see between these responses? Well, we've talked about this already. Classical conditioning are innate, involuntary responses. These are things that your body does without you being able to control it. Your body blinks without you telling your brain to blink, right? But the responses in operant conditioning are voluntary behaviors. These are behaviors that we choose to do that are either going to be increased or decreased. Okay, so let's get into it. First, we need to talk about some of the people that are involved in this. Thorndike is the first. Thorndike came up with the law of effect. The law of effect is the idea that responses produce desirable results will be learned. Basically, when you do something and then you get something you like, you're going to learn to do that thing over and over again. He used cats that he put into a puzzle box. Here's an example of the puzzle box down here. And he would have those cats work to solve a puzzle by trial and error just to obtain the food reward. Gradually, the responses or the tasks were eliminated and, the reward was eliminated, and the actual doing of the puzzle was stamped in. The cat would continue to do that because they got a reward eventually, right? So that's the idea of the law of effect. When you do something that produces a desirable result, you're going to continue to do that behavior, okay? The next person is B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner built on Thorndike's law of effect. And what he did is he developed a different box. So Thorndike used a puzzle box. So here it is down here. Skinner used the Skinner box or the Operant Chamber, which is over here. And he wanted to study this idea of operant conditioning, this idea of reinforcement and punishment. Okay, so the way that the Skinner box worked is the grid here on the floor was electrified, and there was a little lever here that would, when pushed, would deliver food. Okay, and so the rat was eventually or told gradually to get closer and closer to that lever in order to get the food. Okay, so what would happen is if they would move close to the lever, they would get a pellet. If then they touched the pellet or the lever, they would get a pellet. If then they pushed the lever, they would get a pellet. So it would be like shaping, that idea of constantly getting closer to the actual behavior we want. So, like I said, here's the operant chamber. It comes with a bar or a key that an animal would manipulate, push, pull, make it move, whatever, to obtain a reward. And these were food or water, okay? And it was connected to a device that would record the animal's responses. Basically, a camera that could show us what was happening and allow the researcher to have complete control over their environment. Okay, so Skinner used these with pigeons as well as rats and saw similar results. So, why is this important? Well, the idea is shaping. Operant conditioning uses this idea of shaping. When we use reinforcers, we're going to shape small behaviors first that eventually lead up to this larger behavior that we want people to do. For example, if you are going to train your dog to retrieve your newspaper at the very end of your driveway and bring it back, you have to start by first showing them what a newspaper is, and every time that they pick up the newspaper with their mouth, you give them a treat. Okay, then you're going to place the newspaper at your door. They pick it up, they bring it to you. Great, you get a treat. Then you put it outside, pick it up, bring it to you, you get a treat. Okay, so that's the idea of shaping, building to this eventual desired behavior. So here's one of B.F. Skinner's quotes about what he actually did. We first give the bird food when it turns slightly in the direction of the spot from any part of the cage. This increases the frequency of such behavior. We then withhold reinforcement until a slight movement is made towards the spot. This again alters the general distribution of behavior without producing a new unit. We continue by reinforcing positions successively closer to the spot, then by reinforcing only when the head is moved slightly forward, and finally only when the beak actually makes contact with the spot. This idea of taking baby steps, that's exactly what B.F. Skinner is saying. They just did it in the Skinner box or the Operant Chamber. So, what can be used to reinforce animals, humans? There's two different types. Okay, but first we need to know what a reinforcer is. A reinforcer is any event that strengthens a behavior that it follows. Okay, so a reinforcer can be like a thing that someone gets. It can be an event that someone gets to go to. It can be a desired response from a caregiver. But a reinforcer is anything that is going to strengthen a behavior that it follows. Okay, so when the behavior happens, the reinforcer is given. It's going to make someone want to do that behavior over and over. So for example, a heat lamp positively reinforces a meerkat's behavior in cold. Okay, so they're going to get a meerkat to behave a certain way because of the lamp. There's two different types of reinforcers. The first is a primary reinforcer. A primary reinforcer is going to be something that is innately reinforcing something. Usually these are filling biological needs: food, water, safety. Okay, so to get animals to do things, we can give them food, right? Because they need that to survive. So primary reinforcers are satisfying a biological need, like sleep. Okay, if you just do this next thing, I will let you go to sleep. Okay, if you just do this next thing, I will give you your dinner. Okay, those are primary reinforcers. Conditioned or secondary reinforcers are something that we have to learn that we like. Okay, it gets its reinforcing power through its association with a primary reinforcer. So grades make us happy, right? Praise is something that we need to feel good about ourselves. Smiles of approval, applause, money is a conditioned reinforcer because it allows us to buy things. Stickers, those are conditioned, right? We have to learn that there is value in those things before we can actually see them as something we want.